Dr. Andrew Swafford, my man, my friend. It's great to be with you. I'm very much been looking forward to visiting with you about whatever it is that we want to visit about, because we could talk for hours about whatever we want to talk about, but in particular to talk about some things that bear upon your own story and some things that are pertinent to my work in the realm of faith, virtue, and sport, for athletes, but just for forming the mind and understanding what it means to be a human person and all these different things. So you're the man for the job.
Hey, man. Well, I don't know about that, Father. It's great to be here, and you and I were both athletes, and that's part of our story. And
say that again. I want people to know. I want people to know. I was.
You were a great athlete, Father.
Yeah.
And it's I think every boy, every girl, every man, woman, we all want to battle the fight.
Yeah.
We're all looking for that, right? You dream about it in the backyard, and you try to make it come to fruition. And like a lot of us, it's a good thing. It's an awesome thing. It's a great thing. You really grow through it.
Yeah.
But to kind of put it in the right perspective, because when first things are put first, second things aren't diminished but enhanced, and that's kind of my journey. I mean, so I, played a lot of sports, growing up, high school. I mean, that was kind of who I was, And to be honest, I mean, I teach theology now at Benedictine College, but high school for me was girls, parties, image. Football became number one eventually, right? So that's what it was all about. And when it came time for picking a college, I mean, I only had one thing: was where can I play? Where can I play? And I grew up in Ohio, and you dream about being a Buckeye, and then eventually you realize, okay, you're not quite that good, and then maybe the MAC schools would come calling, and
all right.
that didn't turn out, and I ended up playing at Benedictine College, where I teach now, and that's kind of the beginning of my journey there.
Yeah. When first things are put first, the second things are put second. The second thing is not diminished but enhanced. Let's talk more about that right away. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, you put an infinite weight on a finite rack, and it's going to break it. It's going to break it, right? So second things are not made to be first. And so many of us, whether it's you build your life around image, around physique, you worship at the altar of the mirror, you build it around sports. That's who I am. That's my identity. Like at some point, and we've all felt it. We've all been there. It's going to crack. It's going to implode from within. And sometimes you see that in a public way with maybe athletes, celebrities, and whatnot. But we've all seen it among ourselves and friends and family. And again, sports are great. I love sports. I got 5 kids that play sports. But it's a means to an end. That's how I've really kind of presented to my kids. I'm like, look, I want to see you. This isn't an end in itself. Those shirts back in the day, I don't know if they still make them. You remember those shirts like football is life, the rest is just details?
Right.
Do you remember that? I don't know if it's even a thing anymore.
Oh, yeah. Still a thing.
And the reality is, I don't know, this is a metaphor. This is what happened to me, man. I came to play football in college, and I had my life turned upside down. Football I kept playing for 4 years, but it became a metaphor for life, and not the other way around. And that's when my life just changed completely. And I didn't lose that killer instinct. I just said, well, what's the blood, sweat, and tears there look like in the game of life?
Right. Yeah, this is good. This is really good. So the language that I'm using for this is that there is a objective to sport. Well, I shouldn't say the University of Mary.
Yeah.
The vision that we're putting forward that we think truly represents sport as sport ought to be represented in the fuller scope of human history, life, God's creation, is that there is an objective to sport and there's a purpose to sport. The objective is to win. It's always that. It's always going to be. It's never not going to be that. When I'm playing a game with my nieces and nephews, now the objective of the game is to win. The objective for me is not to win the game because they're my nieces and nephews and I want them to win the game. But as an example, the objective of
I've seen you, Father.
Of a card
I don't know
game.
if I believe this. Keep going.
That was the stupidest move you could have done, nephew. No. But the objective of a game, of a sport, whatever, is to win. It's always going to be that. That's why it's created, to do that. Or it's the for which you're doing the thing. But the purpose of sport is the same as the purpose of relationships, the purpose of life, it's the purpose of whatever. It's to become what I was created to be. So the objective of sport is victory in the match. The purpose of sport is victory of life. And so for you to to be sharing what you're sharing. It's exactly what we're trying to pitch, but you've come to learn this, that it's a means to an end. The object, the battle, the fight, all these different things. There is an immediate end of where we're trying to win, but there's another end. It's not only one end. There's another end that it's a means towards, which is for me to become who I was meant to be. Yeah. So I just want to talk more about that. Like, what else do we want to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, like when my kids, so I have 5 kids, 16 to 3, and when the older ones were younger and they started playing sports, I took them aside and said, look, this goes down kind of counterintuitive. I'm like, I don't care if you're not any good. I want to see you learn how to compete and not be afraid and compete fearlessly. Yep. Like, that's why we're out here. And they're good athletes. They're great athletes. I mean, but the goal wasn't just be the elite, although, you know, it can be. But it's the first goal is I want to see you rub shoulders with people. I want to see you not be afraid. I want to see you get knocked on your tail and get back up, like especially going against bigger, stronger kids. And to kind of hit at what you're saying, I mean, to me, when I think about sportsmanship, so like my family and I, we all train jiu-jitsu now. And if you don't know what jiu-jitsu is, it's not kung fu. It's like wrestling, but chokes and joint locks, stuff like that. But I've always thought this sportsmanship is going 110%, going 100 miles an hour against your opponent as hard as you can, and then helping that back up afterward. It's not going soft, which is what you're getting at. Can I be competitive and fearless and fierce and still be a Christian, still be a Catholic, still be a good sportsman? That's what it means. It doesn't mean to go soft. It doesn't mean to not get to go halfway. It means to go as hard as you can and then help that guy up.
Right. Yeah, it means to an end, to become who we're supposed to be.
You know, think about St. Paul. I mean, see, there's different kinds of courage. You know, we think about, I mean, courage is really 2 aspects. It's got the attacking, confronting an evil, engaging in evil. That's the courage of a soldier. But there's also the courage of a martyr who can persevere through something that cannot be removed. Now, how many times in sports, you might need both, but you really need that courage of a martyr. And think about St. Paul. Think about these great saints. Like, it's not just fluff when St. Paul says, run so as to win in 1 Corinthians 9, to win not just a perishable crown, but an imperishable one. Right? This is what clicked for me. Is like all that stuff as an athlete. When you translate that to the moral and spiritual life, that's where it takes off. And here's the deal. I mean, discipleship that costs nothing means nothing. Discipleship that costs nothing means nothing. When it costs something, when you go all in, like this is the scary part, because it's, you know, your life's like on the edge of a knife. It's like, if I go all in, am I going to lose who I am? Will I be something different? Will I be something I'm not? And what you find out is, no, you become a deeper, more joyful, more confident, more secure version of who you always were. But you got to go all in to find that out. You got to go all in to find that out. And what really hit me eventually is like, okay, what do I think of the guy who can't finish his sprints? Well, he's a sissy. What do I think of the guy who can't discipline his passions? I guess he's a sissy too. What does it mean to be a real man and a real woman? What does real interior strength look like?
Right.
And this is my story. This is a lot of people's story. But when you jump on that far side, you're like, I want to fight there in what really matters. Now and in eternity, the way I fought over here in the field. You don't say I don't want the field. The field gets put in its perspective, but it becomes a launching point for a life that's truly meaningful. Let me just give you maybe one other anecdote. I got 2017, a couple of years ago, about 5 years ago, got inducted to my high school Hall of Fame, and we got just 12 of us went in. We got to address the football team. Some of us were older, some were younger, some were coaches, and we had a little bit of time. This was in camp, fall camp in August, and the guy before me, maybe 10, 15 years older than I was, as a former coach, told these high schoolers, said, every one of us up here would trade places with you in a second if we could. You are at the best years, the best stage of your entire life. And I'm like, I'm about to contradict everything you're saying. And how do I lay you down gently? But I was thinking, how sad. No, I felt bad for the guy. I'm like, do you really think the best years of your life were in junior, senior year in football, with a little bit of Friday Night Lights? Like, that's the high point of your life. And you and I both know, guys, their lives are in the rearview mirror. Like the highlight, the mission is in the rearview mirror, and I just felt so bad. And what happens is, and you see a lot of guys who, and guys and gals, men and women who never find their second act. When they stop being an athlete, they don't know who they are. They don't know where to find meaning. Their life becomes a story with no plot. And for me, when this clicked, like, I love my time playing. I'd never go back. I would never go back. I love my life now. I love the mission I have now. And when this happens, you realize, like, you and I, man, you are called, you are chosen, you are commissioned, you are loved into existence. There's a part you got to play in this story that won't be played unless you and I answer the bell. And it's like, what could be more exciting?
Right.
But when sports become the end in itself, the end all be all, you never actually make that jump. So I'm not anti-sport. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
But man, if you want a life brimming with meaning and purpose, recognize the fact that you are loved into existence. You are called. You are commissioned for a time such as this, and you got a part to play that's way bigger than what the coach just drew up on the board with some X's and O's.
Right. So what? I shouldn't jump so lightly to my next point, because we should just really sit with what you just said. This whole understanding of purpose and meaning, and the context of sport for the grander Coliseum or amphitheater of life, or however there's different things. But I do want to ask, what changed for you? Or like what? How did you get this into your head?
Yeah. So I mean, just
you were in the women and physique and
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. I mean, so when I went to Benedictine College to play football, and things went, it's small college football, but we went to the Final Four one year. We had some good runs. I made the travel squad as a freshman. I made the more limited 48-man playoff roster as a freshman. So it looks like everything I want is happening. Fast forward to May of my freshman year, we played an exhibition game in Paris, France. It's something that we did every couple of years, American football in Paris, France. At the time, I didn't even want to go. I wanted to get home to Ohio. I wanted to train and try to gun for a starting spot my sophomore year. And there I am in France, and I'm on a kick return, and my legs go out from beneath me in more ways than one. I break my leg in Paris, France.
Oh.
And I'm just crushed, because, like, everything that makes me me, who I am, is now gone. And so I just kind of sank into a depression that summer. And I had 2 theology classes in the spring before my injury with a certain Dr. Edward Sri, who taught at Benedictine for 9 years. And I was intrigued in the mind, but it hadn't come to the heart. But that summer, it was a slow trickle from the head of the heart, just kind of reevaluate, like, what am I doing? Who am I? Fast forward to sophomore year in August, and the 2 of us went out to lunch at the famous Atchison McDonald's, and I'm firing questions at him left and right, like, what about this? Is this right? Is this wrong? And he's like, I'm teaching this class called Christian Moral Life. It's full, but from the questions you're asking, it sounds like it'd be right up your alley. I'll let you in if you like. And I'm like, well, Dr. Sri, I've taken 17 hours, which is, a decent load in college. Everything I'm taking I need. Can I think about it? Call you tomorrow? He's like, yeah, sure. Well, I redshirted that season because I didn't want to waste a year of eligibility not having trained all summer. And so I had more time. And I took that class, took 20 hours that semester. And you walk into a class like that thinking it's going to be about a bunch of rules. Church says you can't do this, Bible says you can't do that. But I just couldn't have been more wrong. It was about freedom, virtue, friendship, happiness. All of a sudden I could see, like, this is why you're not happy, because you were made for more. And I'm kind of starting to be drawn into a different way of life. I met a group of guys, got with a focused Bible study, and, I connected with them. They were athletes like myself. But they had an interior joy and peace and confidence that I didn't. For me, life went up and down with things on the outside. How are my times? How are my weights? How's my playing time? That dictated how I was on the inside. They had an interior confidence that I didn't have. It's because they knew Jesus Christ. So I'm being kind of drawn in, but at this point, there's one thing I'm kind of not willing to let go of, and that's a relationship with a girl from high school back in Ohio. And I remember in October, my sophomore year, kind of fumbling through prayers. I had people reaching out to me. I mean, I went to Catholic schools, but, I was a complete baby. I had a guy, he's like, I want to teach you how to pray the rosary. He had to correct me in the words of the Hail Mary. I'm a sophomore in college, right? And I remember being in a dorm room. I know, and I remember, saying to the Lord, I'm like, do you want me to leave this relationship? And again, good girl that she was. I mean, this is the last thing that was holding me, really not good for her either, but back from the life I was kind of really being drawn in, yearning to live. And I remember saying in October, no matter what you say, I'm not going to do it. And I don't know how to explain it, but by December, I just knew inexorably, like, this was the last thing holding you back, and walked away. And by that spring, it was like gas on a fire. You just couldn't show me. I mean, what I was really most in some ways angry and furious about is no one had ever challenged me in the moral and the spiritual life in the way they did athletically. No one had ever demanded. I mean, imagine like a football coach is like, every year for 20 years, my wide receivers, running backs, maybe some of my linebackers, you run a 6-minute mile. But then you come along, it's like, you ain't made of what they used to be made of. We'll make it 8 minutes for you. Like, that is a backhanded insult. And I felt that in my bones. Like, why didn't someone love me enough to speak the hard truths to me? Why didn't someone demand excellence of me here in the way they did elsewhere? And so for me, it was just like I didn't lose my killer instinct. I was like gas on a fire. You just couldn't shut me up because I'm like, I kept playing, but it all became, again, as we said, a means and a metaphor for life, and not the end in itself that it was. And then my wife actually transferred in, who became my wife the next year. And so I look back and see the Lord kind of preparing me to meet her. And she played basketball in college and then transferred to Benedictine. And so we both have athletic backgrounds, similar stories, but we went all in. And again, I'll go to the math for this, man. Discipleship that costs nothing means nothing, right? So none of us want kind of finger wagging their face, but we also know those coaches we love the most, those teachers we love the most maybe, weren't the ones that were the easiest on us. Like, we had great pride in going through the regimen of a coach who loved us enough to give us real discipline and real hardship for a purpose. What I saw, man, the Christian life lived to its fullest, most exciting, most exhilarating is when the same kind of thing happens there.
Yeah. I use this similar principle going back to 1 Corinthians 9 when Paul was saying run so as to win. I share with our students who are not in the athletic department, I share with them what the rigors of the athletes are for their athletic pursuits. They're up at this time. They're in the weight room for this. They're disciplining their body for that. They're watching film for that. They're correcting their mistakes here. They're doing this with this. They're committed to this development of teamwork. They're doing they're traveling. They're doing their schoolwork. They're doing all these different things at a very high level with a whole lot of discipline. Are you doing the same thing for your walk with God? And then I bring that back to the athletes to say, you know what, I just told the rest of the students at the university, I told them that they should be living like you with regard to their following of God. And now I want to bring that same thing back to you. Are you, with the pursuits of all of this discipline, are you doing the same thing for your deepest life, your relationship with God, your relationship with others, the football coaches will regularly say, faith, family, football, Father. Yeah. Faith, family, football, Father. And it's like, okay, in that order? Like, in that order. It's like, all right, show me. Because they're watching film for 14 hours a day. So that means you're doing something for your faith and your family that's in priority to that. So it's like, show me that.
Yeah. No,
show me that.
And the deal is we all worship something. We all worship something. We all have a matter of all-consuming concern. And you look at where the time goes, where your mental and emotional and psychological energy goes. That's what we worship. And there's always things that we consistently make time for.
Yeah.
And this is a gut check for me too. Like, this isn't, I'm not picking on anybody, but you're right. Like, I can say one thing, but my life screams maybe sometimes another message of another God that I'm chasing. St. Paul's got a great line, Colossians 3:5. It says, covetousness, which is idolatry. If I covet something, if I want it so badly in the way I really ought to want God in my eternal salvation, it becomes a God in my life. And football was that for me. Truthfully, I mean, I love the game. I think I really love the idea of myself as a football player even more than I love the game. And I said I was lifting for football, but I was in truth lifting for the mirror and just chasing that physique. And this is something for men and women. And I know you know this. I mean, the eating disorders, the desire to have that beach body. We joke about it, man. But man, like that for a lot of people is, for me, for a good amount of time, was what drove me to insane heights. And sometimes we look at someone's work ethic, like, wow, look at their work ethic. That might be something really admirable, but there also might be a disordered obsession underneath that.
Yep.
That is driving that in a maybe even an unhealthy, compulsive way.
Mm-hmm.
Having these conversions, putting things in their proper place, that helps to kind of get the balance. We want excellence in these things, but we also want to live human life well. Not just a particular sports or what. I mean, we're all more than just student athletes. You know, we're people.
So we've laid a lot of broad strokes, but are there any particular either virtues or habits or places where you would draw someone? It's like, no, this stuff, these things, this reality, this whatever the thing might be. This is what I'm trying to say. These are the things at the heart of what it means to do the thing that I'm saying people need to be doing.
Yeah.
What's at the center? Like what virtues, what words, what sort of encapsulates in a practical way sort of what needs to happen? Is it just intentionality, or I mean, like, what are you trying to get people to know? Let's say your students or your children, or your family, or
There's like 3 or 4 things swimming in my mind at one time, so I'll try to spit them all
put them
out.
all out.
And
Yeah,
come
put them
here
all out
way
there.
together.
That's great.
I mean, so one thing that I think is the vice of our age is sloth, achadia, and we think of sloth as just laziness, but that's not quite right. The tradition will define sloth, like in Aquinas, for example, as sorrow at the difficulty of the spiritual good. So sorrow is the attitude. It's like, I want to be great, especially spiritually, but the mountain just looks too hard, and so I'm sad, and then I just roll over and die. And no, for real. And then here's the thing: is like you can't live with that kind of sadness, right? Aquinas got a line where man cannot live without pleasure. If you can't find it spiritually, he'll look for it in other ways. And so sloth seeks outlets, and they're typically, pleasure, like comfort food, right? So, and that comfort food might be food, but it might also be pornography, sex, drugs, alcohol, or sloth might find an outlet in simply entertaining ourselves to death. And here's where, like, social media, I'm not anti-social media, but that kind of mindless scrolling just to fill the time, right? Because I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. I don't want to face the meaninglessness of my life. Or the third outlet is often become a workaholic. And that might be an 80-hour work week for a young lawyer or a young business man or woman.
Or a coach.
But it also, I think, for younger people, it can show up in obsession with working out, obsession with physique, obsession with the mirror, obsession with, and again, I'm all for fitness. But working out just for looks strikes me as disordered. If you get more fit and strong, I mean, you're going to look better. I get it. But working out just for looks strikes me as twisting the purpose of it, of what it's all about. I know there's might be some exceptions here and things like that, but that's just something that I look back at my past and maybe I read into that. So sloth is it's not laziness. It's really spiritual laziness. It's apathy. It's indifference. Sloth is, here's what greatness looks like, and sloth just yawns. Maybe I'll try tomorrow. And here's what I think happens is spiritually, there's this malaise in our culture of spiritual sloth. We're looking for meaning. We can't find purpose. And so one way to find that is sports. And then we pursue that in an obsessive way out of excellence in the sport, but underlying that may be a sense of meaninglessness in our life, which is what we were talking about earlier. So I think maybe that's one thing.
Yeah.
Another thing that some traditions, especially in the East, describe as one of the deadly sins is sorrow. Now, sorrow, not the emotion, not clinical depression, we're not talking about that at all. But what we mean is an irrational sadness that loses sight of eternity. And how much of our lives is lived as if eternity doesn't exist. And how much might eternity put things in their proper perspective. And the virtue that counteracts the sadness is patience. And by patience, it's not just patience as a virtue. It's no. Do you have what it takes to undergo trial? Think about every athlete. Undergo trial and difficulty while maintaining peace of mind, serenity, and maybe even a deep-seated joy. Because you know that you're not made for this world ultimately. And you know this is not the end. And we see this athletically where someone, things go badly and an athlete just goes in the tank, right? And coaches love someone who can keep their composure, keep their peace of mind, right? Be ready for the next thing. A coach used to say the most important play is the next play.
Yep.
Right? And so being able to sustain hardship and trial, because look, try as we might, there will be things that are not going to go our way. Whether it's in sports, you're not going to win every game. You can give it all you got. There's going to be a certain point for the vast majority of us where the time's up and you can't keep playing competitively. Not all of us are going to be pros, right? So, will we have the frame of reference in place, the virtue of patience, to not simply be completely and totally racked as if my life is over, but the patience to go through those things with peace of mind, serenity, and even if it's real, a deep-seated and abiding joy. And what that actually does is those are the kind of people you want on your team. Those are the kind of people you want to marry. Those are the kind of people you want in your business. Those are people you want as your brother, priest, and religious, because those are the people who can actually step out of themselves and enter your world. Because if you don't have the virtue of patience, your life just turns inward. And all you can think about is your own problems, your own concerns, your own worries, and you can't enter the emotional orbit of the other person. You actually become not free to love, to be available to the other. I think that's why our Lord speaks so much about anxiety. And again, there's different kinds of anxiety. There's anxiety. But I think in my life, when I've been so anxious and so worried, I turn inward, and I might be physically present, but I'm not really available. I think that peace of mind that patience can give helps us to turn outward to God and neighbor, and makes us free to love. So there's more things we could say, but I think sloth is ever present, and I think we try to find sports often as an antidote to sloth, that sadness, but it's like fool's gold. It's not the real thing, and it lasts for a while, but then it goes away, and we're just worse off. Well, I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
Dude, I want to go back to each of these points and just rest with them and let them reverberate into the world. But we want to keep our conversation kind of to around a certain amount of time. So people are piqued. They're like, I want to find out more about what this guy talks about. I like what this guy says, or I'm challenged by what this guy says. Where can people engage Dr. Swafford? You got any stuff out there people could purchase, or stuff that you're just working on that people can pay attention to coming out soon? Or I know you do a lot of this stuff. What do you want to share with us? So that people are like, I want to know more about what this guy's talking about.
Well, so my wife and I, we do a lot of ministry together, some separately. So you can go to her website, emotionalvirtue.com.
Yeah.
Emotionalvirtue.com. She wrote a book called Emotional Virtue that's helped a ton of people.
Yeah, super great.
And it's a lot of like hardcore fraternity and sorority, men and women.
Yes.
Like people that would never darken the doorway of a church are like, all right, there's something she's got right here that I want more of.
Yeah, super helpful.
So there's that. We got our resources there as well, books and whatnot. Got a new book coming out with Marcellino D'Ambrosio called "What We Believe: The Beauty of the Catholic Faith." And it's through Ascension, and there's a whole film study that goes with it. We filmed on site in Rome with my wife. So my wife, Marcellino, and I, places like St. Peter's, and just kind of walking through the faith in those places, and in a way that isn't just an idea. Like a living reality that can change, my life, your life. And then my wife and I are contracted with Ascension to write a book. It'll come out in the summer of 23. And in many ways, in spring of 2018, I taught in Florence. Benedictine's got a campus in Florence. And so Sarah and I were there with our at the time, 4 kids and 48 college students. Taught my class on John Paul II, but really just something special happened there in terms of just a life formation. All the things we're talking about here. I mean, in terms of virtue, prayer, like how do I pursue the things that I want, but put them in perspective so that they don't explode or implode, and I really can live a life of peace and joy. So this book is kind of capturing that formation we gave those students.
Yeah. Great. Dr. Swafford, I'm so grateful to sit down with you. I'm so glad that you're here for a conference that we're doing in person, but also to give this blessing to our students, to our faculty, to whoever would watch it on really consequential themes of life. So thanks so much for being with us.
This is great. Thanks for having me.
All right. God bless.
God bless.
All right.